Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, Mark, like a job for me.
Where's the goodies? Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
You know, you could talk your head off all day and never miss it. Too bad the closest you'll ever come to a brainstorm is a light drizzle. You know, you'd make a fortune renting your head out as a balloon. Last time I saw a mouth that big, it had a fish hook in it. Oh, yeah? You couldn't even count to 20 without taking off your shoes. You've got a great face for radio.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. Does that sound familiar? That's from the Animaniacs. And Yako, if you're not familiar, let's put it this way. If you grew up and were listening and watching television in the 90s, there's no doubt you know who that is. This is Douglas Viviani, sans our usual co-host David Cohen on Everything Old is New Again. But we have a special guest this week that's going to make the time fly real fast. I'll tell you, it's going to be a real interesting listen. We're going to spend some time with the most prolific and recognizable animated voiced artist since Mel Blanc. I will say that. You're going to know the voice of Pinky from Pinky and the Brain. Yako, we just heard from Animaniacs, Raphael, and later on, Donatello. So 2 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and over 1,000 voices on top of that. After winning an Emmy, an Annie, a Peabody Award, and rising to the heights of his career, Rob Paulsen was dealt what I think of, he thinks differently though, we'll see, an unfair and serious turn of events, throat cancer. Now, Mr. Paulsen has survived that challenge and now comes on board Everything Old is New Again to tell his story and reflect upon and try to get you to purchase, because I'll tell you, it is well worth it. His memoir, Voice Lessons, something that in this time that is inspirational. It's got some great behind-the-scenes stories, but it also has a real fun look at and serious look at the same time, cancer, how to overcome it, and the effect upon Rob Paulsen. Rob Paulsen, thank you for joining us at Everything Old is New Again.
Well, thank you very much, Doug, for lowering your standards for the next, 4 or 5 hours. You got that much time? It's great. It's a lovely view from here in the water tower of Burbank, and I'm doing pretty good. I'm breathing, and I'm not in jail, but the day's not over yet.
Thank you, man. That was a very auspicious introduction, and it really, truly is my pleasure.
It's my pleasure in turn, and let's turn a little bit towards a little of the intro there. I think most people listening know the voice of Mel Blanc. He did so many voices. We could, start and finish a show just listing them all for the next hour. So I think we all know who that is, but then the question then is, Rob, I'm sure you were aware of him, but you started as an actor, more or less, and that was your intention, and then switched gears to more or less, how would you define what you're doing? Voice, how would you define voice acting? Is that what you define it as? Or?
It is. It's that's the technical term, because for obvious reasons. If it were, hand modeling, it's pretty much describes what it is. Okay, it's onomatopoetic, essentially. Voice acting, as it turns out, especially now with the plethora of animated projects all over name it. Okay, everybody loves cartoons, but they're so ubiquitous now. Voice acting, but acting is acting. I'm a trained, theater type guy, and I moved out to LA, as you mentioned, ostensibly to do live action. That's what I was doing. But in those days, it was MacGyver and St. Elsewhere and Hill Street Blues and stuff like that. But acting is acting. In voice acting, it's small v, large A. I switched gears because the gear switching was offered to me. I, like most young actors, I take that back, like every frickin' actor, we like to work. And so when I was 30, my agent called and said, "You ever thought of doing animation?" I said, "Absolutely. I love cartoons, and I'm a pretty good singer, and I've created voices on my own, not in preparation for being a cartoon guy. It just made my soul happy." That's how every young creative person starts. We just do it because we can't not do it. And I started finding myself living the axiom that luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And Little did I know that all my misbehavior in 7th grade, by mimicking my German teacher and stuff, would prepare me for this opportunity, which in the first years of my cartoon work presented themselves in the guise of G.I. Joe and Transformers. So I walk into this room with wonderful actors, many of whom I'd recognized from television growing up. And the first thing that hit me, Doug, was, nobody cares what I look like. Because by this time, I'd already been on a few hundred auditions, and you don't get most of the work for which you audition. There will always be more actors than jobs. And so I thought, wait a minute, they're hiring me to play a big, burly, northeast and downeast Bostonian soldier called Snow Job. And it didn't matter that I was a 5'10" kid from Flint. Anyway, you see my point. So I got more and more of that work, and I called my agent probably after the 4th or 5th gig, and I said, look, don't stop sending me out for the other stuff. But man, this is the gig. Cut to 40 years later, and people still don't care what I look like.
As long as I can still do this, and I can still do this.
Narf.
And I can still talk like Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron.
Your audience is doing what you're doing right now. They're just smiling. And it is the most glorious, wonderful, exceptionally lovely way to move through one's life. I am a lottery winner, my friend, and I know it. So that's how it happened.
But also, there's certainly that preparation is certainly what you've done before that opportunity arose for you. An observation, I would presume, of human nature, the development of in your mind different types of characters that there are in the world. There's also the different accents that you perform. So, growing up, was that part of your playing with, I don't know, G.I. Joe or what have you? Or did you have Mel Blanc in the back of your mind or whatever?
Oh, God, yeah. And I, like a lot of us, watched cartoons with my parents. My mom wasn't a big cartoon fan. She just loved her babies. My dad and I loved Looney Tunes, and it's pretty hard not to. I also loved Johnny Quest because in those days that was a primetime show when I was a little kid. And fun fact, Tim Matheson was the voice of Johnny Quest in the early 60s.
From Animal House, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. I love that show. So, yeah, my dad and I used to watch Rocky and Bullwinkle, Tom Slick, Super Chicken, all the Looney Tunes. And there was one credit at the end of every Looney Tune, sometimes two, in terms of voice talent. Voice characterizations by Mel Blanc. And although we didn't have videotape and stuff to replay, you see that every Saturday for whatever, 50 weeks a year, for 7 or 8 years, you kind of go, oh, yeah, Mel Blanc, Mel Blanc, Mel Blanc. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I sure recognize that name.
Right.
And I got to work with him. It was remarkable. But your point is absolutely spot on. My heroes as a kid, comedically, I wanted to be a professional hockey player first, and clearly had no talent, temperament, nor dental insurance to accommodate that pipe dream. But it was all about Peter Sellers, Jonathan Winters, Carol Burnett, the usual suspects, Red Skelton, Victor Borge, and Mel Blanc, and June Foray, Paul Frees, people whose voices are incredibly well known. But were they alive today, they'd be rock stars because you'd put a voice with the face like you're doing very kindly with me. And, Bugs Bunny, Bugs is 80. And there are places in the world, Doug, where people might say, Brad Pitt, I think so. But you say, what's up, Doc? And they, oh yeah, Bugs. However you say Bugs in Latvian. You see my point?
Absolutely.
So it's, yes, all that stuff was part of the calculus when I was a kid, but it was not thinking someday I'm going to make a living at this. I didn't take this seriously till I was well into my 20s, but I was performing all the time for free because that's what you do when you're a kid driven to be creative. It's All I do is I play in a more sophisticated sandbox. It's that simple, Doug.
And I'll tell you, Billy West, another voice
Billy,
character.
oh my God, I love that man.
He mentions you, and he says, "Man, does Rob have skills? I was filled with joy the first time I ever worked with this guy. The story is also one of the bravest I've ever known because he battled back valiantly from cancer. The book is something you've got to turn to. Voice lessons how a couple of Ninja Turtles, Pinky and the Animaniacs, or an Animaniac, saved my life." They all did. Voice lessons. Rob Paulsen will be here in a few minutes right after this break on Everything Old's New Again, and continue talking with a legend in the industry and some fun on Everything Old's New Again.
It's time for Animaniacs, and we're saying it to the max.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Maybe I am sick and I don't even know it. My forehead, it's breaking out in a cold sweat. And now I suddenly feel feverish. Now my eyes are going. I can't see a thing. Maybe Donatello's healthometer was right. I am not a well turtle. I gotta get back to the lair while I still can.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. We're exploring all things fun radio, fun television, Animaniacs, Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtles, which that was Raphael, feeling sick. And we have a special guest here, Rob Paulsen, who is the voice of what we just mentioned and thousands of other characters, and we'll go through some of those later on in the show as well. But there's a gentleman who had a gift that he was able to parlay into pleasure for all of us, but then he was paid back for all of his good works, if you will, by the wheel in the sky, and was hit with cancer. And it was cancer that was something that really affected him because it was throat cancer. So we're talking with Rob Paulsen. I just wanted, before I get into discussing that, I want to mention that we're talking about a book here called Voice Lessons. Mark Hamill from Star Wars, and he does Batman in the animated Saturday morning cartoon, and he does a great job with that. He himself has some comments here about our guest. He says, one of the most gifted, prolific, and beloved actors in animation. It's no surprise that Rob Paulsen's book is fascinating, hugely entertaining, and laugh-out-loud funny. What I was expecting was his candid, inspirational, and untimely, life-affirming account of facing devastating medical issues, which such optimism, courage, and determination, I can only regret that I'm too old to play him in the inevitable movie version. What he's saying there is true. This book does have laughs, does have smiles, even when Rob Paulsen is talking about going through cancer, the diagnosis and the treatment. When one of the attendants say, "We can make you better, but we have to bring it to the point of death or almost kill you to bring you back." So, I've seen and read this book, and I've seen you also, Rob, talk about this, and it's inspirational in the way that you had a positive attitude, and many people listening either have friends, family, gone through or will go through cancer diagnosis. How do you get through this with such a positive attitude? And did the positive attitude in turn help you get through this?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't know that my particular ethos and the way that I'm put together, sort of the cut of my jib, I don't know any other way to move through my life, whether it's the death of a beloved pet or cancer or, a fender bender. I think that I have a fairly good grasp on what is important. And I can only attribute that to good parenting and being surrounded by the most gifted, wonderfully talented humans in Hollywood. But also what, people don't know because they don't hang out with Billy West and Mark Hamill and Sean Astin and all the people who have been nice enough, Kevin Conroy, nice enough to write things about my book. They're lovely people. I think entertainers, actors, performers by nature are fairly courageous, and by that I mean in the most rudimentary way. Often, people who do what I do it at the expense of the love of their parents, the respect or love of a loved one, or they break up a romance saying, no, man, I'm going to be in the moving picture business. So already, you choose to do something in which the odds are astronomical, and going into it that you're going to take a few hits. Cancer, obviously, is a completely different ballgame. And you're right. I got cancer right in, I didn't get finger cancer. I got throat cancer. But I must say that I'm sitting in the room, and I'll never forget it. One of those seminal moments in your life. I'm sitting in the room in which I was on the phone with my doctor when he called, and I said, he said, how you feeling, Rob? And I said, how am I feeling, Doc? He said, well, it's cancer. And while I was, not particularly thrilled, never once did I, nor my wife, nor my son say, oh my God, why me? Why me? Well, geez, why not me? At the time I was diagnosed, I was 59. I'd already had a marvelous career by any measure. Even if the doctors had said, here's the deal, we can make you comfortable, but you better go home and make sure your insurance is in order because you're on your way out. I would have not been thrilled, but the way I moved through life is I said, okay, well, give me as much of the cool stuff as you got, and I'm looking forward to the next, whatever happens next. But they didn't. They said, as you suggested, we can cure you, and we're not talking about a remission. This is a treatable cancer. You have stage 3. It has spread to a lymph node in your neck. It's getting bad, but we got it. However, as you suggested, before we cure you, we almost have to kill you. It's rough for obvious reasons. Your mouth, your throat. It's okay. But to make a little unhappy but honest segue, we are less than 24 hours away from the news of Chadwick Boseman's passing. That's devastating news for obvious reasons. I mean, I don't even need to. But he did, and his family did, what I and my family did, and thousands and hundreds of thousands of others do. He did not look for sympathy. He didn't say, oh my God, I was doing all that work that you guys love, millions love, earned other people millions of dollars, Oscar nominations, timeless classics that, and I did it when I had cancer. Not word one. That is what character is about. I did the same thing, and I'm not saying that for self-aggrandizement. He understood, like me, that no one gets out of here without a couple of dings, and that relative to the struggles of others who have cancer, he was far younger than I, and it's just heartbreaking. But I don't know him, but I know people well who did, he has the same sort of outlook. That is to say, yeah, I got cancer. And, oh, my goodness, it looks like it's getting worse. Well, that's our business. David Bowie did the same thing. I had no idea David Bowie was right at the end. But their attitude is such that they get that at the very moment that their doctor's giving them bad news. Right now, Doug, there's a 5-year-old whose parents are getting a phone call, or a 37-year-old mom who's gotten inoperable ovarian cancer, and she's got 3 kids, 9, 12, and 17. Are you kidding me? And that is what went through our collective minds here in the Paulsen house. I also knew, pardon me, that the greatest joy of my work collectively has been the fact that the characters, and let's make it clear, I don't draw them and I don't write them. I'm great at my job, but I got nothing without the people who make it happen. The greatest joy of my career had been, and still is, up to the point of my cancer diagnosis, was Raphael, Donatello, Pinky, Yakko, Mighty Max, Carl Weezer, whomever, and not just me. We all will get a phone call from a child life specialist at a hospital, or Make-A-Wish, or you name it. Hey, young Ryan is a Ninja Turtle fanatic, and he's got stage 4, glioblastoma, and yada, yada, yada. And I'd been doing that since Turtles really hit. So I've been doing it since 1988, 89, and hundreds of times. And do you know what the glorious silver lining, frankly, a platinum lining, what is of this whole cancer experience for me? Is that when people found out that I had been going through this, because I started, people started interviewing me and they'd say, in a much smaller way, wow, Rob looks really skinny because I lost 50 pounds. So it was time to say, all right, I'm through it now. Here's what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. But the glorious thing is that literally hundreds of adults, people who were kids and now are adults, would send me messages, photographs, little videos of, Mr. Paulsen, you won't remember this, but this video is the last video we have of our sweet baby Jordy, who died of cystic fibrosis a year after this. But this is him talking to Yakko on the phone. And we just wanted to send this to you. Or, Mr. Paulsen, this is me talking to Pinky on the phone when I was in the hospital for my, because I lost a leg to cancer. I'm now married. Here's my family. But this is the whole point about all of that, Doug, was that the joy and the power of courage and love that those characters, not me, the characters generated in those young people and parents who lost their children, but saved that precious moment because of Raphael, Yakko, etc., threw it back to me. They said, remember, all these characters are in you, Rob, and your expression that laughter is the best medicine, the cool thing is you can't OD and the refills are free. Take advantage of that. And so it turns out that I'm here talking to this wonderful young gentleman on a Saturday afternoon about my throat cancer with an undeniable platinum lining. So thank you for the opportunity to let me ramble on about it.
Well, listen, and there's a great alliance, headandneck.org, headandneck.org. We're going to come back, talk about that and some more, and positive attitude, and summarize basically what was just said here. But we're out of time for this segment. We'll be back right after this, and everything old is new again with Rob Paulsen.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything old is new again, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
A hot dog holder? Actually, the hot dog holder deluxe, also known as the Versa Bun, it not only holds hot dogs, it is also a stylish hat, a butterfly with fat wings, a comfy seat cushion at your favorite sporting event, and as quickly as you see it right before your very eyes, it's gone.
United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Republic, Dominican, Cuba, Caribbean, Greenland, El Salvador, too, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Guyana, and still Guatemala, Bolivia, then Argentina, and Ecuador, Chile, Brazil.
You recognize that. That's all from Jimmy Neutron. That's Carl Weezer, Yakko singing the world song from Animaniacs, and we have the voice behind that and many, many more. Rob Paulsen here on Everything Old is New Again. We're talking voice lessons, how a couple of Ninja Turtles, Pinky and an Animaniac, saved my life. Rob Paulsen, the voice behind that, and thousands of others that you all definitely recognize. To me, he's the gentleman that inherited the mantle from Mel Blanc, and it's just a true pleasure to speak with him today. We were talking a little bit, he was given a little bit of a tough break there by having a diagnosis of throat cancer, and how ironic that is and was. But it wasn't lost upon me in reading this book, Voice Lessons, that intertwined between the stories, the behind-the-scenes stories of how all this works, that there's a positive attitude here. And we just heard, and if I could summarize, your response to my questions about how do you have a positive attitude through going through a cancer diagnosis, I think what you're saying and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you kind of look back at your life and for any of us, not just yourself, but for any of us, what we have done in our life, let's not ignore that there has been some good, that we, let's not be modest all the time, that we did good for other people and are doing good for other people. And I bet you're going to get that phone call from that friend you haven't heard from a little ways back if they hear about it. Or if you make some phone calls to others, it will kind of fill your gas tank there with some positive attitude, because they're going to kick back to you, hey, you know what, you were special to me, you did this thing, you did that for me. I'm sure all of us have so many things that we have done for people that we don't even remember, that were significant to them. And so if you can grab onto some of those memories, that think would feed your positive attitude that I'm going to get through this one way or the other. Does that make sense?
Perfect. In fact, you said it far more succinctly than I. That's exactly what it is. It is, in some circles, referred to as the butterfly effect. We never know when the most modest of kindnesses will change someone's day, maybe their week, and maybe even their life. It really is. That's true. And you're correct. It's all about context. That is not to say that a cancer diagnosis isn't devastating. It is. But it's contextualized in each person's circumstance. So if I'm being I'm getting very existential, but if I'm being intellectually honest in the context of how my life has gone versus the lives of people, even people I know well, or people who made different choices, whatever. My life was fantastic because of the people I know, because of my wife, because of my son. My parents, I miss my mother every day. I miss my dad about once every 4 weeks, and he would totally get that. Siblings, all of that. A career that I chose to do. As much as I understand when, showbiz goes like this and you're broke and you're rich and, there's no business like it. But ain't nobody I know who's ever had their parents put a gun to their head and said, you better be an actor. So right. I'm all about personal responsibility. All of that having been said, when it boiled right down to it, I got cancer, just like zillions of other people. So what makes me special to the extent that I should not be dealt a blow? I got throat cancer. Well, there are people, I forgot the young gentleman who played for the Arizona Cardinals who decided to take a $1 zillion contract and say, I put it aside, I'm going to go do what my country's calling me for, and was killed.
Right.
Now, those are choices we all make. And you said it as I said, because I've clearly even eclipsed your time. But it's exactly about that, Doug. You never know. And you said something I've never thought of. It's absolutely true. And this is, we're living it. We're living it right now. You pointed something out to me that I hadn't thought of that is a wonderful aspect of the fact that I'm, had a little bit of celebrity with a small c, but people whom I'd not heard from for decades read about it or heard me talking about it and said, hey, Rob, it's Jim from high school. My God, how you doing? I tell my kids about you all the time, that I went to high school with you and I sat behind you in science class and we played hockey together. I hadn't heard from these guys for years. The cancer made that possible. So you literally you pointed out to me one of the great aspects of that experience. And again, I'm not trying to be totally Pollyanna, but you know what? A little bit of Pollyanna is not a bad thing.
Right.
And it's just, you made excellent points. Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's just by listening to your story and reading this book, Voice Lessons, you can gather that same information that I just did and more. It's a pleasure reading. You've got to get involved with this Rob Paulsen, Voice Lessons. Further, if you want to help others that are in a difficult situation, try to maybe help them get through it, in whatever manner you can. Head and with the word A-N-D, headandneck.org is the Head and Neck Cancer Alliance, and they can provide all kinds of guidance as how you can help your neighbor and family and friends and those that we don't know that are struggling through this difficult time, and also teach us a little bit about how maybe we can avoid it or see the signs early on ourselves. So it's important. headandneck.org. Along those lines, Rob, I've seen you at conventions and I've seen you talk about different things along these lines where these characters, we've talked about how they give back to you, but you see that these characters have a special place for all of us that's grown up with them. But besides that, even, special needs community really responded and has responded very well to you. Not a heck of a lot of time, but if you could summarize a little bit of the event or an event, I know one that I'm thinking of where you had a gentleman come up to you who was overwhelmed and just wanted to hear Jaco, and you were able to speak to him about it. And tell us how that made you feel and how it made him feel.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. This young gentleman was last year, actually, last summer in New Hampshire. And this young gentleman, Anthony, who is autistic, probably about 28, 30 years old. But people who know autistic young men and women understand that often they're overwhelmed by boisterous crowds, noise, horrible, crippling anxiety. And that was the case with this young man. But love, just like empathy, courage, kindness come from the most unexpected places, Doug. And in this young man pleaded with his sister, please drive me to the New Hampshire Comic-Con because I got to meet Jaco. Now, I don't know if he knew me, but he had to meet Jaco because for whatever reason, and again, it's not just characters limited to the ones I performed. Often, people on the autism spectrum are transfixed, find their joy, are able to get out of their head vis-a-vis these characters. So 3.5 hours each way. The sister came up to me while her brother Anthony was standing in line, and I got to tell you, folks, he was a mess. She pointed him out, rocking back and forth, perspiring, weeping, clutching his hand. It was awful. But the point is courage. For that young man to go through that just because, and mind you, he and his sister had to pay to get in, right? They drove there to talk to Jaco. Finally, the young man makes it up, and he was a mess. But as soon as I started doing this, he did what you're doing right now. And I swear to God, folks, I've seen it a lot. But in this case, it was stark because his face just lit up. He stopped shaking, and it was I who got more out of it than he. I promise you.
And I'll tell you that, though, is a little bit of humility on yourself, your part as well to say that. And I'm sure that's what, to me, life is about in many ways, because it's a two-way street. To just think that you're just the only one out there is silly. And I think that's a great message that we're getting through Voice Lessons. There's a story in there about Gordie Howe and your humility that you learned from him.
Thank you. Do we have time for me to tell that quick quote?
No,
or do you want to
we're going to leave that as a sort of to hold the audience in bay bay, and we're going to have you come back to hear a story about Gordie Howe and humility and more with Rob Paulsen right here, and everything old is new again. The book is Voice Lessons. You got to get this. I'm telling you, you're going to learn not just voice lessons, but lessons from the voice.
Norway and Sweden and Iceland and Finland and Germany now one piece. Switzerland, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Italy, Turkey and Greece.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
I must find my voice.
Oh, I know, Blaine. How about this one? Oh, hey you. Oh, this is my voice. Ah.
Pinky, you're making a case for vivisection.
Boingy, 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 boingy.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. Caught me by surprise there. Pinky and the Brain, you're listening to a little bit there of Pinky, and the voice of Pinky is Rob Paulsen. I'll tell you, this is a great time and a great book. Right now, when we are sort of looking at the four walls sometimes and looking for something to do in new entertainment, Voice Lessons is a book that you're not going to put down. You're going to want to pass it along, maybe even to your kids for sure. Life lessons from the master of the voice, if you will, Rob Paulsen. How a couple of Ninja Turtles, Pinky and an Animaniac, saved my life. Voice Lessons on Amazon. You'll find that. And further, headandneck.org. headandneck.org. Take a look at that if you're looking for to gather some information as to how you can affect other people for the positive. Headandneck.org is a head and neck cancer alliance that really is a well worthwhile location to donate and or help in any way you can. From time to time, I'm going to cheat here now, Rob Paulsen. David and I do some characters. And in this next clip, you're going to hear Sherlock Holmes. You're going to hear Dr. Watson, who's upset because he doesn't get the credit for solving the mysteries that Sherlock Holmes does. That's our take on it. You'll hear Captain Balzac, who is a pirate. You'll hear Jack Pumpkinhead, who is from The Wizard of Oz. And he is a character that we created, is upset because he's the only character that's been left behind from all the books that was not in the movie. And so they have a little bit of an attitude. So they did a little something with an American Pickers. We don't need to get all of it. If anyone's listening and wants to hear that show, it's on our website, show number 195, the American Pickers site, American Pickers show, and it's also on YouTube. But let's hear a little bit of an argument between those characters and David Cohn and myself, trying to moderate that for a few minutes and see if we can get a little bit of advice from the master himself and see how we did.
It is CRAOL on the manuscript, when in fact his name was spelled with 2 R's and 2 L's. Therefore, this is a complete and utter forgery.
You solved the mystery.
Hey, good job, guys.
Sherlock Holmes, man. He's zeroed right in on that.
We know why does Sherlock Holmes get so many, accolades and praise.
Hey, let me just say, Lewis Carroll, I knew him because, I'm older than all of you put together.
I got to deal with this fool.
I know that when it came to his friends, his real name was CAROL, but his pen name was the 2 R's and the 2 L's. So this is just a manuscript, and he's spelling it like he's
yet another fool. I got to travel through time and space to be with not one fool, but 2 fools at this point in time. I've got to deal with another gentleman in the year 2017. It's giving me as much heartache and heart attack as this Sherlock Holmes. I got to tell you what, I understand. Dr. Watson, I understand completely where you're from. This guy, this Balzac, I got to deal with. He's an absolute nut. He's 4 for 4. He doesn't even, if you're going to a forgery, we have
I'm 4 for 4. These guys said, don't listen
You're out
to them.
4 for 4. The Sherlock Holmes.
Don't listen to these guys.
The Sherlock Holmes, right. He's taking all the credit.
These
it's
are
unbelievable.
legitimate. They're all legitimate, I'm telling you.
Sitting down, Pumpkinhead, I'll give you a little piece of advice. Get as far away from this gentleman as you can.
There we go. I know it's going to be difficult because we did a whole show and that summarizes. But
that was great. We heard a little Sling Blade. We heard a little Scottish thing. I did a couple of characters years ago in the Tinkerbell movies called Bubble, who was kind of a rip-off of David Tennant. So I really liked that particular dialect. Oh, man. No, that was great. In fact, you guys are really good. Really good. So to coin Robert De Niro in The Untouchables, I want him dead. I want his family dead. I want a house burnt to the ground because I got to make a living, dude. No, honestly, it was great. And it reminds me a lot of when I was a kid. When I grew up in Michigan, I had a very dear family called the Lamb family. And Mr. Lamb was a daily broadcaster on a show called the Buick Factory Whistle Show because he was the show that that appealed to all the workers. But he had a world-class, state-of-the-art at the time recording facility in his basement studio. So we did exactly what you and David do. You just had a blast coming up with characters, and they were great. It's difficult. Was it you doing the mumbly one?
Yeah.
That's
it's kind of like a cross between Beetlejuice and Sling Blade.
But what's difficult, and you pulled it off. What's difficult about that is to mumble and be authentic to whatever character you're improvising, but be understandable. Because if you're going to tell a joke or you're going to try to improvise in presumably, it doesn't even have to be a comedic way. You have to be able to be understandable. Right. And you did that. I presume what you guys just did is punched record and off you went.
Yes, that's the thing. We had a general outline of what was going to happen and what this theme was, but nothing of what we said was rehearsed at all.
In the book, I cite that my improv skills, which were fortunately honed at the feet of Lorraine Newman, Phil Hartman, Paul Rubens, whom you guys know as Pee-wee. I mean, those people are world-class improvisers. So I learned a lot, and that skill is integral to being an animated voice person because often the script, while it might be absolutely wonderful, that's where the actor can have some input. And what you did was a blast. You guys should continue to do that. I don't know how often you do it on your show, but it's not only fun, but it's fun for the audience because you guys are good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is a family show. However, two of my favorite actors when I was a kid and continue to be were Dudley Moore and Peter Cook. They did two characters that were unabashedly blue. However, their improv skills are mind-blowing. I think they're available on YouTube. They did two characters called Derek and Clive. But I'm telling you what, if you listen to that, guys, the fact that, it's quite offensive language notwithstanding, but their ability to improvise in the character, and when they inhabit the character, they are in, and they don't ever pop out. Robin Williams, Jonathan Winters, same thing. But that skill is mind-blowingly helpful, but it's also so entertaining. And they did exactly what you and Dave did. Push the button, but my goodness, it's just exactly what you did. And it inspired me when I was a kid because I'm going, oh my God, none of this is scripted, and it's utterly authentic.
It's just a fun thing. We hope the people that are listening on the radio enjoy it. We think we do, and I think if you just have the enthusiasm and just run a theme through it and something, improv is so hard. But on the other hand, if you've got a little bit of a theme underneath, what the point is, you can get it through, and it's a lot of fun.
And when it works, it's freaking magical. You and David will find yourself saying things that Doug and Dave would never say in real life because you've inhabited a character so deeply, and then you listen back and go, oh my God, that was the character. I stepped aside for a moment. That's a cool experience.
And
I love that.
Do you have the ability to do that when you do your characters? Like I say, a lot of it is already written for you, but do they give you some room to improv?
Absolutely. When I get to be Carl Weezer, we would always do a pass of the script that was written, but then they would say, hey, let's do a pass where you guys have a general outline, as our friend Doug suggested, and then we go forward and we knock the daylights out of it. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't, but as they say, it's never not funny, and it sure beats the hell out of lifting stuff.
There you go. And we're with Rob Paulsen. Rob, we promised to tell a smidge of the story of the humility that you learned from Gordie Howe. So if you could just in a couple seconds.
I love this. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted to be a hockey player, but as a result of that and this wonderful career, years ago I got involved with a bunch of actors who play hockey, and we used to play against the old timers of National Hockey League teams to raise money for children's charities. And of course, being a Ninja Turtle and I could skate backwards, I was in. We played the Red Wing Old Timers. I was born in Detroit. My team is the Red Wings. Gordie Howe is my hero, but I have a wonderful story. I got to know Mr. and Mrs. Howe very well. They were very deeply involved in children's charities. But Gordie went from being my idol to my hero. And there is in literally 5 seconds. Many years ago, I was invited to be part of a charity softball game in Vancouver with Mr. and Mrs. Howe. And I was sitting next to Gordie signing autographs. At that time was primarily Ninja Turtles, and Gordie was signing everything that wasn't nailed down because he was Gordie Howe. And he was about 65 at the time, and I was sitting next to Gord. This is probably 2 hours in. A young man came up and said very kindly, "Thank you very much, Mr. Howe, for signing my puck. Your hand must be really getting tired." Gordie put down that Sharpie, looked at that young man and said, "Not at all, son. I worked too hard for this privilege." In that moment, he went from being an idol to a hero. And it is the way in which every person with whom I've been fortunate enough to interact, Steven Spielberg, Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, the best of the best, understand how fortunate they are. And they understand that it's not about them. It's about other people. And they are privileged in the circumstance in which they find themselves. And I find that is a common theme. Having now the 6th opportunity to work with Steven Spielberg on a project, he's utterly the same way. He knows the power of who he is, but he doesn't use it as a cudgel. He doesn't use it as leverage unless, it's making a deal. But with workers, people who work with him and for him, the public, they make it about the other person, and what a lesson.
Speaking of heroes, we're here with Rob Paulsen, the hero of Voice Lessons, a book that you can see is going to really affect you in a positive way. Get involved with that. Get involved with headandneck.org. And the new Animaniacs are coming out. Keep an eye out for that, for your kids now, maybe, for the next generation. He'll be involved in that. This is a tremendous time we've had with Rob Paulsen. Mr. Paulsen, thank you so much for spending so much time with us here on Everything Old is New Again. We look forward to having you back as soon as possible.
My pleasure, buddy. As soon as I'm out of prison, rehab, I'll just show up.
There we go. We'll be back next week on Everything Old is New Again to continue talking all things pop culture, entertainment, and some fun. Maybe you'll hear some voices next week. We'll see.
Burundi, Lesotho, and Malawi, Togo, the Spanish Sahara is gone. Niger, Nigeria, Chad, and Liberia, Egypt, Benin, and Gabon, Tanzania, Somalia, Kenya, and Mali, Sierra Leone, and Algeria, Dahomey, Namibia, Senegal.